Cellfie, how matter and energy flow through organisms.
Driving question. How can we use digital media to teach others how matter and energy flow through organisms?
Matter. Matter is any physical substance that takes up space or volume. Matter makes up everything you can see and touch. There are two main types of matter, antimatter and matter. When these two collide, there is a 100% energy release. There are four main types of matter: solids, liquids, gases, and plasmas. Solids have a definite shape and volume. However, liquids have a definite volume, but the shape varies and changes. Gases have neither a definite shape nor a definite volume. Plasma also has neither a definite shape nor a definite volume, and the particles are broken apart. In extreme environments, other forms of matter such as buoyants, Einstein condensates, and neutron stars are present. There is a law that's called the law of conservation of matter. It states that the amount of matter in the universe is always the same. Matter can change form but cannot be destroyed. Matter is also a subcondensed form of energy, and when you break an atom apart, it releases a lot of energy.
Energy. In physics, energy is a weighable property that must be transferred to an object in order to perform work on or to heat the object. Energy is a conserved quantity. There are two types of energy: potential energy and kinetic energy. However, energy can come in many forms such as thermal energy, electrical energy, chemical energy, nuclear energy, mechanical energy, gravitational energy, and more. Energy sources are divided into two groups: renewable energy and non-renewable energy. Renewable energy sources are sources that can easily be replenished. However, non-renewable energy sources are not as easily replaced. All forms of energy are associated with motion. For example, kinetic energy is always in motion. Potential energy has the potential of motion. All living things use energy to function. In addition to that, humans use energy to run machines and electronics. The law of conservation of energy states that energy can be converted in form but cannot be created or destroyed.
Cells and cell theory. Cells are the smallest units of life that are able to carry out basic life functions. Cells are composed of different structures, each structure having a specific function. Cells also combine to create tissues, organs, organ systems, and organisms. Robert Hooke was the first person to discover cells. When he first saw them underneath a microscope, they reminded him of cells that monks live in. Due to this, he called them cells, and the name stuck to this day. The cell theory is a very widely accepted theory that states that cells are the basic building blocks of life, that all organisms are made of cells, and that all cells come from pre-existing cells. Cell theory was discovered and developed around 1655, and many people contributed to its discovery. Though the cell theory was developed by many people, the main person who discovered it was Theodore Swan. He discovered animal cells after studying certain animal species. Around the same time, another scientist decided that plants are also made of cells. They teamed up and they then made a theory called the cell theory.
Organelles. An organelle is a tiny cellular structure that performs specific functions within a cell. Organelles are embedded within the cytoplasm of eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells. In the more complex eukaryotic cells, organelles are often enclosed by their own membrane. For example, the nucleus is the brain of the cell. It controls everything that's going on in the cell. Another example is the rough endoplasmic reticulum, which produces proteins. Membrane-bound organelles are organelles within the cytoplasm, which is a gel-like fluid. These organelles control all of the cells. In addition to that, the only organelle that isn't membrane-bound in plants is the cell wall. Animal cells don't have cell walls because they simply don't need them. All of the organelles are membrane-bound organelles.
The chloroplasts. Chloroplasts are organelles that conduct photosynthesis, which is where the photosynthetic pigment chlorophyll captures the energy from the sunlight, converts it, and stores it in energy storage molecules ATP and NADPH, while freeing oxygen from water and plant and algal cells. They then use the ATP and NADPH to make organic molecules from carbon dioxide in a process known as a Calvin cycle. Chloroplasts carry out a number of other functions, including fatty acid synthesis, much amino acid synthesis, and the immune response in plants. Chloroplast consists of two membranes, the inner membrane and the outer membrane. The inner membrane surrounds the stroma and grana, which are stacks of thylakoid. On top of the thylakoids are chlorophyll molecules. The number of chloroplasts per cell varies from 1 in unicellular algae up to 100 in plants like wheat. Chloroplasts are only found in plant and certain protist cells, such as algae. Animal cells do not contain a chloroplast.
The mitochondria. The mitochondria is known as the powerhouse of the cell. The reason is because the mitochondria is an organelle that takes in nutrients and converts them into energy in a process called cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is the conversion of glucose and oxygen into carbon dioxide, water, and ATP or energy. Without this energy, the cell would not be able to function. The mitochondria is composed of two membranes, the inner membrane and the outer membrane. The outer membrane surrounds the organelle like a skin, and the inner membrane folds over many times, creating layered structures called cristae. Inside the mitochondria, there is a fluid called matrix, which contains ribosomes and DNA floating around. Inside the mitochondria, there are also structures called granules, which are thought to control the concentration of ions.
Types of organisms. There are two main types of cells, which are prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Those two cell types make up organisms, which are also sorted by prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Prokaryotes are single-celled organisms that don't contain nucleuses or membrane-bound organelles. Prokaryotic organisms consist of cells with membrane-bound organelles or organelles that are within the cytoplasm, or a gel-like fluid within the cell wall. Bacteria and cyanobacteria are examples of prokaryotes. Eukaryotes, on the other hand, are multi-celled organisms that consist of eukaryotic cells that contain membrane-bound organelles. In addition to that, the genetic material is in the form of chromosomes, which are contained in the nucleus of a cell. Examples of eukaryotes are animals and plants. Although animal and plant cells are both eukaryotes, they can be quite different. For one, animal cells are typically smaller than plant cells. In addition to that, plant cells have chloroplasts while animal cells do not.
Photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a process that plants go through in order to create food. Photosynthesis is the process of taking energy and changing carbon dioxide and water into glucose and oxygen. The chemical equation is energy plus carbon dioxide plus water gives off glucose and oxygen. The plants use the glucose for energy and the plants release the oxygen into the air because the plants don't need the oxygen to survive. Photosynthesis is the exact opposite of cellular respiration, which we will talk about in a later slide. Photosynthesis is essential for all organisms because animals can't make their own food. Animals depend on plants for food, and plants make their own food to survive. There's a lot more to photosynthesis because it is a very complicated process.
Aerobic cellular respiration. Aerobic respiration is a type of respiration process that requires oxygen to function. Cellular respiration takes in glucose and oxygen to make water, carbon dioxide, and ATP. There are three main stages in aerobic respiration. The first is glycolysis, which occurs in the cytoplasm. In glycolysis, two ATP molecules are produced. This is the least important step, but it is still necessary. In glycolysis, oxygen isn't used yet. The next stage, called the Krebs cycle, two more ATP molecules are produced, along with 6 NADH and 2 CO2. In the last step, which is called the electron transport chain, or ETC, there are 34 molecules of ATP produced, and water is also produced. The electron transport chain creates most of the molecules of ATP. The two other stages both happen in the mitochondria, which is why the mitochondria is called the powerhouse of the cell. Cellular respiration is the exact opposite of photosynthesis. Cellular respiration is also essential for all organisms to obtain their energy.
Producers. Producers are organisms that make their own food. They are also known as autotrophs. They get energy from chemicals or the sun, and with help of water, convert that energy into useful energy in the form of sugar or food. The most common example of a producer are plants. Other organisms typically rely on producers. This is because producers are typically the start of food webs, and food chains. Since they are able to create their own food, they don't have to rely on other living forms to obtain their energy and to survive.
Consumers. A consumer is an organism that feeds on plants and other animals for energy. There are 4 types of consumers: herbivores, which are plant eaters; carnivores, which are meat eaters; omnivores, which are plant and animal eaters; and detritivores, which are decomposers. Herbivores rely on plants to obtain their food. Carnivores can eat herbivores because they eat other consumers. Omnivores can eat anything from producers to herbivores to carnivores. Decomposers, true to their name, decompose dead living beings to become soil and grow plants again. Consumers rely on producers and they are at the top of a food chain and a food web. This is partially because they eat producers and consumers can't make their own food from the sun.
Conclusion. So what have we learned? We first learned about matter and what matter is. Then we dived into energy and what energy is. After that, we started talking about cells and about what cells are. We talked about organelles or parts of cells. We learned about the types of cells and types of organisms. Then we learned about two extremely complicated processes, photosynthesis and cellular respiration. We learned about the basics of those processes and how they relate to each other. Then we also learned about producers and consumers. Overall, we learned a lot in this video, and you can learn much more about these topics.